Hi, everybody. It's Patricia Coughlin. I started this vlog, this YouTube station, in order to share my enthusiasm about doing work of depth and significance. And in so doing, I've tried to balance very specific sorts of domain specific knowledge to psychotherapy and specifically to intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy, along with much more common factors. So both common therapeutic factors, regardless of what your specific method is, and then out even further to common factors regarding effectiveness, mastery, and expertise. And so that's what I want to talk to you about today. What does it really take to be outstanding in whatever your field is? I'm going to use an analogy. Whether you are a chef or a cook. Okay, so a cook follows a recipe and they take instructions. So again, if they need to keep putting out a very consistent product and they need to do beef Wellington or chicken fricassee, whatever it is, right, the same for every meal, then following those instructions and the recipe makes all kinds of sense. But if you want to be a chef, which is someone who creates new dishes, you have to know the basic principles. You have to understand about the importance of balancing fats and salt and, the different factors there. And the same is true as a therapist. Are you someone who's trying to follow a recipe? You want that cookbook, you want somebody else, a teacher and supervisor, to tell you what to do, and you want an instruction manual. And, perhaps at a certain point in development, that's going to be helpful to you. But when we look at the research on the best therapists, they blend specific factors with common factors. Too high a use of specific factors tends to yield negative results. So I was listening to a fabulous podcast by Seth Godin. And if you don't know this guy, I would definitely check him out. He's a thought leader, a businessman, very, very prolific. I think he's written 19 books at this point. And so he was also talking about this issue of expertise and what it takes to be outstanding in your field. And he talked about, when we're talking about a creative endeavor, right, which psychotherapy is, again, we're never going to have the same session twice, right, even with the same patient, right? So you trying to be that line cook who's, just doing the same dish every day, it simply doesn't fit our job description, right? We have to know basic principles. We have to be able to apply them flexibly based on the needs and capacities of the person and as they change, right, week to week and month to month. So he is talking about 3 different factors, right? So when you decide, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, this is the very specific kind of work I want to do. Are you a generalist? You think you can be all things to all people? If so, you're probably not going to be very good, right? But if you really decide, right, I am an intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapist, or I want to master DBT or CBT, or I'm really interested in treating addictions or eating disorders or something like that, right? So you're not all things to all people, right? You're really going to master a specific domain. You know who you are, what you're about, and who your audience or clientele is. And that means you can also say no to people who don't really want what you have to offer. Free up your time to work with people who actually line up, right, with the kind of work you do. So that's one thing that, again, Seth Godin is really, really clear about. Don't try to be all things to all people. Really be very specific and narrow your focus. And then he talks about three things. One, what are you here to change? So really be clear about that. What do you want to change, right, with your patients and even in the field, okay? Are you just wanting to change someone's relationship to their anxiety and symptoms so they can manage them better, right? Or do you want to see deep transformational change in which those symptoms are no longer required? So that's the first thing. What kind of change are you really after? And two, what possibilities does that kind of change afford? Right, I'm thinking of a patient who, when I was asking him what his goals are, he said, well, I just want to be able to get in touch with my feelings. Now, to me, okay, that's a goal, but it's kind of more of a task in a way, or it's some kind of intermediate goal. I said, okay, so if you get that, okay, in our work together, you're able to connect, right, with your own feelings, then what will that enable you to do? What possibilities will be created in your life that don't exist now? And he said, oh my goodness, I'd be confident, right? I'd be able to go after what I want in my business world, and I'd be able to have close, emotionally satisfying relationships, okay? So be clear about what is that change going to create as far as possibilities. And then three, what kind of emotional labor is going to be required for you to do this kind of work? So Godin makes this distinction between labor, right, which most people used to do. You were a blacksmith or a bricklayer, or, you had physical labor to do. But in our world, obviously there's still some people who do that, but most people are doing work that really requires emotional labor. And I don't just mean being in touch with your feelings and emotions, but willing to really devote time and energy to perfecting your craft. You're putting in your emotional investment. This is work you're going to do whether you feel like it or not, whether you're tired or anxious or uncertain, right? You have a commitment and you've made a promise to the patients you're working with to be present and engaged and to bring your A game, right? So that's really this emotional investment. And if you don't make that, right, if you stay, again, general, trying to be all things to all people, or you're staying on the fence about, well, I use a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of CBT and a little bit of, the fact is you're probably not going to become a super shrink, right? You're not going to become outstanding in your field. And again, maybe that's not something you want, right? So you're not willing to put in that emotional energy and investment and labor. But if you want to be outstanding, if you want to become an expert, that is what is required. So again, we're talking about three levels, right? Very, very specific domain. Like, last time we talked about understanding the defense of introjection, right? And that's extremely important for a dynamic therapist to understand and to be able to work with, right? Then we have the common therapeutic factors, but that's still within the domain of being a psychotherapist, right? Being able to establish and maintain a therapeutic alliance, for example, right? And then we're going to go even one step out. What does it take to be an expert in whatever your field is? And that's what we've been talking about today. So I hope this is helpful to you. Always love your comments and feedback. Thanks.